October 26, 2011. The Blue Ridge Mountains of southwest Virginia awoke under a heavy shroud of fog, thick and unyielding, clinging to every ancient oak and gnarled branch. A desolate silence hung in the crisp, cold air, broken only by the distant, mournful wail of a siren, a sound that grew steadily louder, cutting through the stillness like a premonition. The rising sun, a pale, anemic disk, struggled valiantly to penetrate the dense mist, casting long, distorted shadows that danced with an unsettling, otherworldly grace. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves was palpable, a natural perfume of the Appalachian autumn, yet beneath it, a faint, acrid tang, metallic and cold, hinted at something profoundly unnatural lurking just beyond visibility. This was Copper Hill, a place where time moved slowly, and secrets often buried themselves deep. The mournful wail intensified, resolving into the unmistakable sound of two Virginia State Police cruisers, their blue and red emergency lights pulsing an eerie rhythmic dance against the impenetrable fog. Behind them, a Child Protective Services SUV followed, its presence a stark indicator of the gravity of their mission. They turned off the main, winding road, tires crunching on the long, unpaved gravel driveway leading to a secluded, weather-beaten farmhouse. The structure, nestled deep within the undulating hills, looked as if it had absorbed every storm and harsh winter for a century. A young social worker, her face etched with a grim resolve, exchanged a tense, knowing glance with a seasoned state trooper, his jaw set firm against the cold morning air. They knew this was no ordinary welfare check. They were there on an anonymous tip, a whisper of unthinkable horrors that had seeped out from behind these closed doors, echoing through the quiet, insular community of Copper Hill. The caller, a local too afraid to give a name, spoke of strange family dynamics and children who looked too much like their grandfather. What the social worker and the trooper were about to uncover would not only shatter the bucolic facade of this forgotten corner of Appalachia, but expose a multi-generational nightmare, a depravity rooted in the very heart of a family that had remained hidden for decades. How could such a profound violation of trust and human decency persist undetected for so long, and what unspeakable truths lay buried within the walls of this isolated home? The heavy, ornate door, scarred by years of mountain weather, creaked open slowly, revealing Jedediah "Jeb" Miller. He was a man whose presence seemed to fill the very air. His eyes, though narrowed by the morning fog, held a calculating intensity. His frame was sturdy, still powerful despite his age, clad in worn denim overalls and a flannel shirt. A faint, almost imperceptible smirk played on his lips as he surveyed the Virginia State Police cruisers and the CPS SUV on his property. "Well now," he drawled, his voice a low rumble that carried a surprising edge. "What brings the law to Jeb Miller's humble abode so early? You folks lost your way up these hills?" His tone was dismissive, a thinly veiled challenge. Social worker Mark Jensen, a younger man with a neatly trimmed beard and an earnest demeanor, stepped forward, a folder clutched in his hand. Detective Anya Sharma, her posture straight and observant, remained slightly behind him, her gaze sweeping the dimly lit porch and the sliver of the house visible through the doorway. "Mr. Miller, we're here for a welfare check," Jensen began, his voice calm but firm. "We received an anonymous tip concerning the children's well-being." Jeb's smirk vanished, replaced by a steely glare that seemed to pierce through the fog. "Anonymous tip, you say? About my family? My children are fine. We keep to ourselves out here. Don't need no government folks poking around in our business." His words were a clear assertion of the fierce Appalachian privacy that often shielded secrets. The air grew thick with unspoken tension. Jeb Miller leaned against the doorframe, effectively blocking their entry. "This here's private property," he asserted, his voice hardening, tapping a gnarled finger against the wood. "And in this county, a man's home is his castle. You got a warrant, son?" His challenge, steeped in a local understanding of civil rights and property law, was designed to intimidate. Jensen glanced at Sharma, a silent acknowledgement of the jurisdictional tightrope they were walking. Without a warrant, their options were limited to observation and persuasion. The quiet, almost imperceptible fear in the two women partially visible behind Jeb, Sarah, and Emily was already a red flag, their eyes darting nervously between their father and the authorities. Despite Jeb's defiant stance, Detective Sharma's trained eye caught subtle details. The children, peeking out from behind Sarah's skirt, seemed unusually withdrawn, their faces pale, their clothes simple but worn. And then there was the unsettling resemblance that had been mentioned in the tip, an almost uncanny mirroring of Jeb's own features in the younger boy, far too pronounced to be mere coincidence. The metallic tang she had noticed earlier, now masked by the damp earth, lingered faintly in her memory. This was no ordinary family dispute. This was a family locked in a fortress of silence, and Jeb Miller was its unyielding gatekeeper. As they finally retreated, unsuccessful in gaining entry beyond the threshold, Jensen and Sharma exchanged a look of shared frustration and deep concern. The anonymous tip, initially a vague whisper of strange family dynamics and children who looked too much like their grandfather, quote, now resonated with an alarming clarity. The caller, too terrified to reveal their identity, had spoken of an insular world, a family that rarely ventured into town, existing almost entirely off the grid. It was a story common in these parts, but the added detail of the children's appearance had been the hook, a chilling detail that now weighed heavily on their minds. Back in the cruiser, Jensen pulled out his notepad. He stonewalled us completely, he stated, running a hand through his hair. But you saw Sarah and Emily, right? They looked like ghosts. And those kids. There's something off, Anya. Sharma nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the rearview mirror as the Miller farmhouse receded into the fog. I saw it, Mark. The fear. The way Jeb controls even their eye contact. And that boy, the one with the dark hair, he's the spitting image of Jeb, but younger. Much younger. The disturbing resemblance was undeniable, a visual piece of evidence that screamed louder than any words. They knew this was just the beginning. The anonymous tip, combined with their observations, provided enough grounds for a more formal inquiry. The challenge, however, lay in penetrating the formidable wall Jeb had erected around his family. We need more than a gut feeling to get a court order, Mark, Sharma reasoned. We need something concrete, something that can't be dismissed as rural eccentricity or a nosy neighbor. Their next step was clear: gather more information, discreetly, from outside the immediate family circle, a task made difficult by the isolated nature of Copper Hill. Days turned into a week, and the investigation proceeded with cautious patience. One crucial lead emerged from an unexpected source: the local elementary school. Sarah's oldest son, 8-year-old Billy Miller, had recently started 3rd grade. His teacher, Ms. Jenkins, had noticed a pattern of withdrawn behavior, difficulty socializing, and significant developmental delays in language and fine motor skills. He struggled to maintain eye contact and flinched at sudden movements, exhibiting a quiet anxiety that seemed to permeate his very being. The school nurse, Martha Albright, a veteran of the Copper Hill School District with years of experience, was the first to connect the dots. She had seen too many cases of neglect and abuse over her career to ignore the subtle yet persistent signs Billy exhibited. During a routine health check, she noticed several old, faded bruises on his back and legs, inconsistent with typical playground tumbles. More alarmingly, his explanation for them was vague, rehearsed, and delivered with a chilling lack of emotion. Martha Albright immediately recalled the hushed rumors that occasionally surfaced about the Miller family's isolation. With her training in recognizing indicators of abuse and her inherent duty to protect the children in her care, she didn't hesitate. Her report to Child Protective Services was detailed and urgent, corroborating the earlier anonymous tip with specific, verifiable observations. It was the first solid piece of external evidence, a crack in the Miller family's heavily guarded facade, providing the leverage Mark Jensen and Detective Sharma desperately needed to push their investigation forward. Martha Albright's urgent report, detailing Billy Miller's unexplained bruises and withdrawn demeanor, was the critical turning point Mark Jensen and Detective Anya Sharma had been waiting for. It transformed a vague, anonymous whisper into a concrete, actionable lead. Immediately, the Virginia State Police escalated the investigation, cross-referencing Jedediah "Jeb" Miller through state and national criminal databases, including the FBI's National Crime Information Center, NCIC, searching for any prior arrests, reports of abuse, or even unusual behavioral patterns that might have gone unnoticed in the quiet hills. The sheer isolation of the Miller property, once a shield, now made their discreet movements more challenging, but the school's intervention provided the official entry point they desperately needed, formalizing the inquiry under, quote, case file #VA SW20110017. With this new, verifiable evidence, the team moved cautiously, but with renewed purpose. Mark Jensen meticulously revisited local public records, delving into generations of land deeds, property tax assessments, and any historical family documents tied to the Miller name. He uncovered a lineage deeply rooted in that specific tract of Appalachian soil, a pattern of extreme self-sufficiency that underscored their insular nature. Simultaneously, Detective Sharma began a series of discreet, door-to-door inquiries with longtime Copper Hill residents. She carefully navigated the tight-lipped community's inherent reluctance to speak ill of their own, seeking subtle shifts in behavior, past whispers, or any observations that might explain the family's extreme isolation and the disturbing allegations now surfacing. The goal was to build a comprehensive picture, establishing a pattern that could withstand legal scrutiny. The next critical step was to prepare for forensic interviews, a highly specialized process designed to elicit truthful information from traumatized individuals without leading them. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a seasoned forensic interviewer from the Regional Child Advocacy Center, was brought in. Her expertise was crucial. She needed to create a safe, neutral environment where Billy, and later the other children, and then Sarah and Emily, could articulate their experiences in their own words, free from fear of reprisal or the manipulative influence of Jeb. The protocols for these interviews were exceptionally strict, ensuring that every detail was meticulously documented, providing unimpeachable evidence. This careful, deliberate approach was paramount, especially in a case where the victims were so deeply entrenched in their abuser's control and fear. The interviews commenced, starting with 8-year-old Billy Miller. Dr. Reed's patience was extraordinary, guiding Billy through play therapy and drawings, slowly unearthing fragments of a life no child should ever endure. His descriptions were often veiled, using metaphors or simple, hesitant phrases, but the underlying narrative of fear, isolation, and inappropriate touch began to emerge with chilling clarity. When Sarah and Emily were interviewed separately, the process became even more delicate. Years of systematic abuse and manipulation had created profound psychological barriers, including elements of Stockholm Syndrome. Their initial responses were often marked by denial and a deep-seated, albeit twisted, loyalty to their father, manifestations of the complex trauma they had suffered. Each session was a painstaking excavation of buried truths. The consistency in the children's accounts, combined with the subtle but telling signs of distress from Sarah and Emily, provided the necessary legal justification. Detective Sharma knew that while powerful, these testimonies alone might not be enough to secure a conviction against a man like Jeb Miller, who would undoubtedly deny everything with practiced defiance. The disturbing resemblance noted by both the anonymous caller and Mark Jensen, now observed firsthand in the children, screamed for scientific confirmation. A court order for DNA collection was swiftly obtained, a crucial step to provide irrefutable, objective proof. This cold, hard science was the key to finally breaking through Jeb Miller's fortress of lies and exposing the multi-generational depravity that had festered within the Miller family for far too long. The samples were meticulously collected, prepared for analysis at the Virginia Department of Forensic Science Labs under DFS Report Number 2011 VA0017. Armed with Dr. Reed's meticulous forensic interview reports, which painted a harrowing picture of systemic abuse, Mark Jensen and Detective Sharma felt a surge of grim determination. The children's fragmented narratives, though delivered with the hesitant innocence of youth, spoke volumes, and the sisters' guarded admissions, tinged with a tragic loyalty, provided the crucial human element. Yet, as they presented their findings to the Commonwealth's attorney, a seasoned prosecutor named Eleanor Vance, an unexpected hurdle emerged. Vance, while acknowledging the gravity of the allegations, stressed the formidable challenge of prosecuting Jeb Miller. His deep roots in Copper Hill, his local influence, and the sheer lack of tangible physical evidence beyond the children's testimonies made the case legally precarious. She required an even more ironclad argument for the DNA collection, warning that any misstep could allow Miller's high-powered rural defense attorney to discredit the entire investigation. This wasn't an outright denial, but a significant and frustrating delay that threatened to stall their momentum. Sharma knew that every hour counted, particularly for victims as vulnerable as Sarah, Emily, and the children, whose fragile trust could easily shatter. She and Jensen immediately pivoted, diving deeper into the scant public records and the subtle nuances of Copper Hill's social fabric. They revisited Ms. Jenkins, Billy's teacher, and Martha Albright, the school nurse, meticulously documenting every observation, every behavioral anomaly, every faded bruise. They even re-interviewed the anonymous tipster, this time promising even greater anonymity, hoping to extract more specific details that could bolster their legal argument. The goal was to weave together a narrative so compelling, so irrefutable, that no court could deny the urgent need for forensic DNA evidence, despite the fierce privacy laws of rural Virginia. Finally, after intense legal maneuvering and a presentation that left no doubt about the children's peril, the court granted the order for DNA collection. But the battle was far from over. When uniformed officers arrived at the Miller farmhouse, accompanied by a court-appointed medical technician, Jeb Miller was ready. He invoked every right, demanded to see the warrant personally, and insisted on his lawyer's presence, turning a routine procedure into a tense, hours-long standoff. His defiance was a calculated performance, designed to intimidate and delay. The discreet collection the team had hoped for became a grueling negotiation, a testament to Jeb's unwavering control and his belief that even the law would bend to his will. It was a stark reminder of the patriarch's pervasive power, even as the walls began to close in. The meticulously collected DNA samples, secured after a tense standoff at the Miller farmhouse, were immediately dispatched to the Virginia Department of Forensic Science DFS labs in Richmond. This was the critical juncture, transforming suspicion into undeniable fact. Each buccal swab, hair follicle, and blood sample represented a thread in a tangled, horrifying tapestry, and the forensic scientists, accustomed to the grim realities of their work, understood the profound implications of this particular case. The analysis would be exhaustive, searching for familial relationships that defied all natural and legal boundaries. Detective Sharma knew the scientific confirmation, documented under DFS Report Number 2011 VA0017, would be the unassailable evidence needed to dismantle Jedediah Miller's carefully constructed world of deception and control. The disturbing resemblance that had haunted their observations would soon be quantified by cold, hard data. While the forensic team worked tirelessly, the investigative net widened. Mark Jensen, the social worker, revisited Copper Hill, engaging with longtime residents in a more targeted manner. He focused on the community's periphery, seeking out individuals who might have observed the Miller family's extreme isolation over the decades, delivery drivers, utility workers, or even distant relatives who had been estranged. The goal was to paint a comprehensive picture of Jeb's dominion, gathering anecdotes about his fierce protectiveness, the lack of visitors, and any suppressed whispers that had circulated about the family's unusual dynamics. It was a delicate dance, navigating the ingrained Appalachian distrust of outsiders and the deep-seated reluctance to betray a neighbor, even one as enigmatic as Jeb Miller. Each hesitant word and averted gaze spoke volumes about the fear he commanded. Days stretched into another week, the silence from the lab amplifying the team's anticipation. Then, the first preliminary results arrived. The initial analysis confirmed parental links between Jeb Miller and the children living in the farmhouse. The news hit Mark and Anya with a profound, sickening certainty. While not yet explicitly detailing the incestuous nature of the relationships, this finding alone was enough to validate every red flag, every gut feeling, and every fearful whisper that had led them to the secluded property. It solidified the groundwork for a more aggressive legal strategy. The DFS report, now partially complete, provided the first objective crack in Jeb's impenetrable facade, transforming vague allegations into a documented scientific reality. The air in the precinct office thickened with a grim resolve. The full DNA analysis report from the Virginia Department of Forensic Science arrived a few days later, meticulously detailed and devastatingly clear. DFS report number 2011, VA0017, unequivocally confirmed that Jedediah Jeb Miller was not only the biological father of the children, but also the biological father of Sarah and Emily Miller. The report laid bare the unspeakable truth. A multi-generational nightmare of incest had been festering within the Miller family for decades. The cold, scientific data, presented in precise genetic markers and statistical probabilities, painted a picture of depravity that was almost impossible to comprehend. This was the irrefutable, objective proof that shattered any possibility of denial, confirming the extreme violation of Virginia Code Section 1, 8.2 to 366 with chilling finality. With the DNA evidence now undeniably linking Jeb Miller to the horrific crimes, the investigative team transitioned from evidence gathering to strategic execution. Detective Sharma and Commonwealth's attorney Eleanor Vance immediately began coordinating with the Virginia State Police Special Weapons and Tactics, SWAT team, and other relevant agencies. The plan was to execute an arrest warrant at the Miller farmhouse, ensuring the safety of the victims while apprehending a man who had proven himself both cunning and volatile. Every detail, from the approach to the entry, was meticulously planned, recognizing the potential for resistance from a patriarch who had ruled his isolated domain with absolute authority. The fortress of lies Jeb had built was about to crumble, and the long-awaited confrontation was imminent. The full DNA analysis report from the Virginia Department of Forensic Science arrived a few days later, meticulously detailed and devastatingly clear. DFS report number 2011, VA0017, unequivocally confirmed that Jedediah Jeb Miller was not only the biological father of the children, but also the biological father of Sarah and Emily Miller. The report laid bare the unspeakable truth. A multi-generational nightmare of incest had been festering within the Miller family for decades. The cold, scientific data, presented in precise genetic markers and statistical probabilities, painted a picture of depravity that was almost impossible to comprehend. This was the irrefutable, objective proof that shattered any possibility of denial, confirming the extreme violation of Virginia Code Section 1, 8.2 to 366 with chilling finality. With the DNA evidence now undeniably linking Jeb Miller to the horrific crimes, the investigative team transitioned from evidence gathering to strategic execution. Detective Sharma and Commonwealth's attorney Eleanor Vance immediately began coordinating with the Virginia State Police Special Weapons and Tactics, SWAT team, and other relevant agencies. The plan was to execute an arrest warrant at the Miller farmhouse, ensuring the safety of the victims while apprehending a man who had proven himself both cunning and volatile. Every detail, from the approach to the entry, was meticulously planned, recognizing the potential for resistance from a patriarch who had ruled his isolated domain with absolute authority. The fortress of lies Jeb had built was about to crumble, and the long-awaited confrontation was imminent. The weight of the DFS report hung heavy, transforming abstract horror into undeniable fact. Detective Sharma, Mark Jensen, and Eleanor Vance convened in a secure conference room, the air thick with grim determination. The primary objective was now clear: apprehend Jedediah Miller and ensure the safety of Sarah, Emily, and the children. Vance outlined the arrest warrant, meticulously detailing the charges under Virginia Code Section 1, 8.2 to 366. Sharma, her gaze fixed on a tactical map of the Miller property, began strategizing with the Virginia State Police SWAT team. Every approach, every entry point, every potential threat was scrutinized. They knew Jeb was a man of calculated defiance, and his capture would be no simple task. He had years of isolated living and self-sufficiency to draw upon, making him a formidable, unpredictable adversary. As the final details of the raid were being meticulously planned, an unexpected call came through to Mark Jensen's secure line. It was Martha Albright, the school nurse, her voice hushed and urgent. Emily Miller had contacted her, not directly, but through a payphone at the Copper Hill General Store, a place she rarely visited. Emily, in a desperate whispered conversation, revealed she feared Jeb had discovered she was trying to keep a journal of his rules and punishments. She hadn't been able to leave it at the school, but she had hidden it, along with a small, worn photograph, inside the hollowed-out base of an old, broken bird bath near the back shed on the property. "He keeps a shotgun under his bed," Emily had added, her voice trembling, "and he watches the road like a hawk." This sudden, harrowing communication from Emily was the critical twist. It confirmed not only Jeb's violent tendencies, but also the depths of his paranoia and control. The bird bath, an innocuous yard ornament, now became a potential treasure trove of evidence, a silent testament to Emily's courage and desperate need for liberation. More crucially, the mention of the hidden shotgun fundamentally altered the tactical approach for the SWAT team. What was initially planned as a high-risk apprehension now escalated into an even more perilous operation, demanding extreme caution and precision. Jeb Miller, aware of his impending exposure, was likely armed and dangerous, transforming the secluded farmhouse into a potential powder keg. The investigation had irrevocably shifted from mere confirmation to mitigating extreme danger. Emily's desperate plea to Martha Albright detonated like a silent bomb within the investigation's core. The mention of Jeb's hidden shotgun, a grim detail delivered with a child's raw fear, instantly ratcheted the planned apprehension into a full-blown, high-risk operation. What was once a strategic entry to secure evidence and victims now demanded an entirely different level of precision and caution. The Virginia State Police SWAT team, already on standby, immediately reconvened. Every approach, every potential point of resistance, every contingency had to be reevaluated. Jeb Miller, the unholy patriarch, was not just a suspect, he was now a confirmed armed and dangerous threat, transforming his isolated farmhouse into a potential powder keg, poised to ignite at the first sign of intrusion. Beyond the immediate threat, Emily's whispered confession about the hidden journal and the worn photograph offered a glimmer of profound hope and a new layer of evidence. Tucked away in the hollowed-out base of an old, broken bird bath near the back shed, these items could be far more than mere personal effects. They represented Emily's desperate, courageous attempt to document her torment, a tangible record of Jeb's rules and punishments that would corroborate the DNA findings and the children's harrowing testimonies. Retrieving them, however, presented an additional perilous objective, adding another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. This was Emily's silent scream for justice, a testament to her resilience and a vital key to understanding the decades of depravity. As the tactical plan solidified, the quiet veneer of Copper Hill began to crack under the burgeoning pressure. The increased presence of Virginia State Police vehicles, the hushed conversations among residents, and the sudden, official-looking activity around the Miller property could not be contained. Local news outlets, initially hesitant to report on mere welfare checks, now caught wind of the escalating investigation. Reporters, sensing a major story, began to converge on the outskirts of town, their presence a palpable sign that the Miller family's secrets were about to be thrust into the unforgiving glare of public scrutiny. The community, once fiercely protective of its privacy, found itself grappling with a burgeoning sense of outrage and disbelief. The whispers of strange family dynamics now escalating into cries for immediate action and justice. With the full DNA report confirmed, Emily's urgent warning received, and the media spotlight intensifying, Detective Sharma and Mark Jensen felt the immense weight of the operation. The final briefing for the SWAT team was tense, every officer understanding the gravity of the mission: secure the victims, apprehend a dangerous man, and retrieve crucial evidence, all without further endangering anyone. As the first pre-dawn light began to filter through the still heavy fog, painting the Blue Ridge Mountains in shades of gray, the convoy moved out. The air was thick with anticipation, mirroring the cold, damp mist that clung to the winding roads, a silent, almost mournful witness to the impending confrontation. The fortress of lies was about to be breached, and the long, dark night of Copper Hill was finally nearing its end. The pre-dawn silence shattered as the Virginia State Police SWAT team executed the warrant. Moving with practiced precision, tactical officers enveloped the Miller farmhouse, their night vision goggles piercing the lingering fog, turning the familiar landscape into an alien zone. A swift, controlled breach of the heavy front door, a deafening flashbang, and then the authoritative shouts, "State Police! Search warrant!" Chaos erupted, quickly contained. Sarah and Emily, their faces pale with terror and profound relief, were swiftly secured with their children, gently guided to waiting Child Protective Services personnel. Jeb Miller, caught off guard but still formidable, emerged from a back room, shotgun in hand. His eyes, burning with a furious mix of disbelief and defiance, met Detective Sharma's across the dimly lit living room, a silent, primal challenge. He was swiftly disarmed and subdued, his decades-long reign of terror abruptly ended. Hours later, in a sterile interrogation room at the Franklin County Sheriff's Office, Jeb Miller sat across from Detective Sharma and Mark Jensen. Stripped of his shotgun and the familiar trappings of his dominion, he was still an imposing figure, his gaze unwavering. "This is a damn witch hunt," he drawled, his voice a low rumble. "A government overreach into a man's private life. My family keeps to itself, always has. You ain't got nothing on me." He dismissed the children's testimonies as wild stories, and the sisters' words as lies. Sharma then laid the full Virginia Department of Forensic Science report, DFS report number 2011, VA0017, on the table between them. The official seal, the precise genetic markers, the irrefutable data. It was all there, stark and undeniable. Jeb Miller's steely composure finally cracked, not in fear, but in a chilling, almost perverse moment of pride. He stared at the report, then at Sharma, a slow, unsettling smirk spreading across his lips. "They were mine," he declared, his voice rising, resonating with a twisted, absolute conviction. "Mine to protect, mine to raise, and mine to keep. No one else had a claim on my bloodline, not the government, not no outsiders. This land, this family, it's all Miller. Always has been, always will be." The raw, unadulterated evil in his eyes was unforgettable, a chilling testament to the depth of his delusion and a complete absence of remorse. It revealed a man who saw no sin, only his perceived right to absolute dominion, shattering the investigators with the sheer horror of his psyche. Following his chilling confession, Jedediah Miller was swiftly indicted on multiple felony counts of incest and aggravated sexual battery, a stark application of Virginia Code Section 18.2 to 366. The subsequent trial in Franklin County Circuit Court became a media sensation, drawing national attention to the quiet Appalachian Hills, a true reckoning for the insular community of Copper Hill. Faced with overwhelming DNA evidence, meticulously gathered by Detective Sharma and Mark Jensen, and the devastating, albeit private, testimonies of Sarah, Emily, and the children, a plea deal was eventually struck. This decision was made to spare the victims the further trauma of testifying publicly, prioritizing their fragile healing. Jeb Miller, the unholy patriarch, was convicted and sentenced to multiple consecutive life terms in a maximum security Virginia state penitentiary, ensuring he would spend the remainder of his days behind bars, stripped forever of the dominion he so fiercely craved. Justice, however belated, had finally arrived for his victims, but the profound scars would undeniably remain. The ripple effect of the Miller case tore through Copper Hill. The community, once fiercely private, was left reeling, grappling with the dark secret that had festered in their midst for decades, hidden in plain sight. The Miller family name became synonymous with horror, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones. Sarah and Emily, along with their children, were swiftly relocated to a secure, undisclosed location, entering intensive therapy programs designed to address severe developmental trauma and the complex psychological scars of their ordeal. Their identities were fiercely protected, a crucial step in allowing them a chance at rebuilding lives free from their father's shadow. The case sparked urgent local discussions about community vigilance, the signs of abuse, and the critical need to support vulnerable families, even in the most isolated corners of rural America. The journey for Sarah, Emily, and their children toward healing will be long and arduous, a testament to the intergenerational trauma that can ripple through families. Yet, their courage in breaking the silence offers a beacon of hope for countless others trapped in similar darkness. Cases like the Miller tragedy underscore the vital tension between traditional American values of privacy and the undeniable need for social services and law enforcement to intervene, particularly in remote areas where oversight is thin. If this harrowing account has moved you, consider supporting organizations dedicated to protecting children and empowering survivors. If you found this deep dive into the Miller case compelling, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories, and watch our next investigation into the hidden secrets of another American town. It's just as intense as this.